Jai Jaya Tvam Devi Chamunde Jaya Bhutapaharini Jaya Sarva Gate Devi Kalaratri Namostute Jayanti Mangala Kali Bhadra Kali Kapalini Durga Shiva Kshama Dhatri Swaha Swadha Namostute Swaha Swadha Namostute Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Salutations to you, the slayer of Chanda and Munda. Salutations to you, the dispeller of ghosts. To you who are the goddess, the refuge of all beings. Salutations to Kali, the dark night. Salutations to you who are auspiciousness and embodiment of victory. Salutations to that Kali, the wielder of the skull bowl. Salutations to the terrifying, ferocious Bhadrakali, who is Durga, the fortress, and Shiva, the blessing. You abide in every mantra. Salutations to you who are Swaha and Swadha. Om, peace, peace, peace. And we'll meditate on Durga. Let me just pull up the Dhyana mantra. One of the various Dhyana mantras that we have for Ma Durga. Durga Puja, there we go. So here's the Dhyana mantra. Om Hrim Kala Brabham Katakshayr Arikula Bhayadam Mauli Bhadhendu Rekham Shankam Chakram Kripanam Trishikamapi Karayarudvahantim Trinetram Sigaskandadi Rudham Tribhuvanam Akilam Tejasa Purayantim Dhyaye Durgam Jayakyam Tridasha Parivritam Sevitam Siddhi Kamahi. Oh, we meditate on that Durga who is named the Victorious One. Her skin is the complexion of a storm cloud, and she casts a sidelong glance at her enemies, inspiring dread and fear in them. She is crowned with a crescent moon, holding a conch, discus, bow, and arrows, and other weapons. She has jata, she has matted locks, and she is the destroyer of all enemies. She has 3 eyes and rides atop the shoulders of a lion. She shines, for she is pure consciousness, illumining the 3 worlds of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. All about her, the 33 million gods are praising her, desirous of spiritual perfection and material enjoyment. Om Sarva Mangala Mangalye Shive Sarvartha Sadhike Sharanye Triambake Gauri Narayani Namostute. Om Shrishti Sthiti Vinashanam Shakti Bhute Sanatani Gunashraye Gunamaye Narayani Namostute. Om Sharanagata Dinartha Paritrana Parayane Sarvasyarti Hare Devi Narayani Namostute. Jaya Narayani Namostute. Jai Shri Mahishasura Mardini Devi ki Jai. Daksha Yagya Vinashini Devi ki Jai. Mahaghora Devi ki Jai. Yogini Parivritta Devi ki Jai. Shri Shri Bhadrakali Devi ki Jai. Shri Durga Devi ki Jai. Daksha Yagya Vinashinye Mahaghoraye Yogini Koti Parivrittaye Bhadrakaliye Durgaye Namaha. Jai. Jai. Happy Daśamī, Shubh Vijaya. So this is the victorious day, the 10th day when we celebrate the victory of the goddess. And I was just saying, like, basically we're celebrating the fact that we've been celebrating. That's what it is. It's like 9 nights we've been meditating on the goddess, worshipping her, contemplating her, chanting her mantras. We've been getting together and having so many celebrations with one another. And we've just been immersed in this intensified contemplation on Ma. And it's been fun. It's been so fun. And now we're going to have fun in order to commemorate and enjoy and celebrate the fact that it's been so fun these past few 9 days. But also, we shouldn't deny that it can be very difficult and challenging, especially for those doing intense sadhana. But I think especially I would argue for those who aren't. Do you know, I think it's important to point out that there are astrological features to this period that make it a very challenging and transformative time for everybody, whether or not they're aware of the goddess in this form. No one is unaware of the goddess, by the way. Everyone is interfacing with her in each and every moment. They just call her by different names. Some call her atoms and matter and science, and it doesn't matter. It's the same goddess that appears before them as the material world, as the psychological world, and as the spiritual world in all shapes and forms. So no one is unaware of the goddess, but of course not everyone is consciously actively doing some kind of spiritual practice. And arguably it's those people who might experience transformation this week also, but in a kind of dramatic and sudden way, and sometimes we don't really know why it's happening. For example, a very close friend of mine, she broke her leg in the beginning of Navarātri, and then today she sends me a text and she's like, what the fuck? That's how the text starts, because usually, you know, in our life, if we're going to be honest, that's kind of our Maha Mantra as we go through life. It's like, just like, what the fuck? And she sends me a text, what the fuck? And the next text is, I broke my other leg. It's like, just like, duh, like this period of time can be like that for so many people. How random, how unlikely. She doesn't break her legs often. She's not like, and you know, Nitya Leela also was on the back of a motorbike and then fell off the motorbike and things like that. Like a lot of people are in the hospital right now for many different reasons, and you'd be surprised like how many people are at this time experiencing sort of freak accidents that don't typically happen to them, whether it's health related, physical, like structurally, like in the bones or something, or psychologically related. Some people, like another friend of mine, just was so jaded and so, I guess it was some backlash of some sort when he was doing his puja, and he just like decided to put away everything. He just couldn't bear to see his altar anymore or like do any kind of bhakti practices, and it just kind of took him by surprise. And so things like that, psychological shifts can occur, physical things can be can go awry, but in a way that's more dramatic than usual. Because, you know, like when we think about life in general, it's just samsara. It's the nature of samsara, the nature of this impermanent world, that things come and things go, and there's always going to be some karma to work out. That's why we're here. So there will never, ever, I think, be a period of time in which we are not being radically transformed. So if an astrologer were to say, you're going through a lot of change right now, they would always be correct, because the nature of this universe is change. You know, you could say, oh, this is a really dramatic time. Yeah, duh. Because it's a really dramatic place in which the inherent structure of reality is change and transformation. But that doesn't mean there aren't periods of time where that is a little bit more intense, or is felt in a little bit more of a, I guess you could say, streamlined way, where things seem to happen faster. For better and for worse. I know people who started doing puja and then they had health concerns, or like things happened that they didn't like. And I also know people who started worshipping Ma or worshipping in some way, shape or form, and immediately they get some huge inheritance, which can be just as disequilibrating actually as some kind of misfortune. When things become really good suddenly out of nowhere, that can be just as hard to deal with. So this is also a time when people just suddenly come into property, wealth, maybe power. They feel really good. They feel beautiful. There's like a radiance. We say Rupam Dehi, Jayam Dehi, Yasho Dehi, Dvishojahi. What if somebody suddenly blows up overnight, like becomes really famous? That's Yasho, glory was given. Or somebody just becomes very inspired and makes some good art or something like that. All of that is the grace of the Divine Mother. Yesterday we were watching a Bharatanatyam performance, and it was the episode of Mahishasura taking all the offerings from all the gods and from all the homas and destroying the gods, and the goddess comes and she destroys them. At the end of the dance, and of course the whole thing is told in dance, at the end of the dance, the dancer, she's a single dancer, incredible dancer, she was depicting different kinds of devotees who come to the Divine Mother. Obviously the paradigmatic devotee in our depiction of Ma is the god. The gods themselves. Like God himself goes to the Divine Mother. That's a very important point in śākta theology, that she is the power of God. So even God himself has to invoke her before he can create, maintain, destroy, before he can do anything. God is not God without God's glory, splendor, power. So goddess is higher than God insofar as we're defining goddess as the essence of God. Shiva Shaktaiva Shakti iti Shakti. Sorry, Shiva Swabhavaiva. The essence of Shiva Swabhava is Shakti. So that being said, the paradigmatic devotee is God and the gods. They all go to the goddess and they're asking her for help with the demons. But then the dancer depicts a slew of other practitioners or other people, arguably, who come to the goddess. So someone is in danger and she depicts the person who is in danger saying, Trahi me Devi, Trahi me, oh mother, protect me. Then she depicts a student and she depicted this by like a person writing in like a little book. And that student too is praying to the Devi so that his mind will be, her mind, its mind will be illumined. Their mind will be illumined. And then there's a wrestler, and the dancer depicted someone who was taking refuge in their physical strength, maybe about to go and do a fight or something. They also took refuge in the Divine Mother praying. So the end of the dance was a depiction of everyone in every different field of life and how dependent we all are in our respective fields on the Divine Mother, as you'll see in a few moments in the poem that I'm going to read to you. So the Divine Mother is the source of all power, strength, beauty, and sometimes in this period a lot of that can come. You can just become stronger and more brilliant and more beautiful and all of that. And also the karmas that are associated to these things in life might radically work themselves out, especially in these last 2 nights. That's why we intensify our worship. You can also think of it in this way. When things are really inauspicious, that's when we as a community, as a culture say it's an auspicious time. Just think of what we're doing. We're saying right now there's something very dramatic happening astrologically. It's the time when Ketu and Rahu are acting up. So let's intensify our sadhana, our spiritual life. Let's come together. Let's celebrate. Let's beat drums and let's sing and let's dance. This has been our cultural response. All of us everywhere in the world to the darkness of the body, mind, and world. We sing. We light a fire. So last night was Mahanavami. We lit a fire and we did some homa. And hopefully we all feel a profound purification and shift as a result of the last 9 nights of worshipping the goddess, culminating with the Mahanavami Homa, with the final fire ceremony at the end of everything. So congratulations and happy Vijaya. Now we can celebrate the fact that we've celebrated. We can bask in the afterglow of our worship and just feel good together. It's like wonderful. It's like wonderful to get to the end of something and look back and be like, phew. Whether it was awesome or really difficult, the fact is, the period of Navaratri, known as the Sarada Navaratri, is officially, it's not officially over. Today is still a day to celebrate, Dussehra and whatnot. But we did it. Here we are. And now we're also acknowledging the passing of time. That's an important thing to point out. The goddess is seasons. She experiences a Navaratri every year 4 times at least, if not 8 times, as per the 4 seasons. But now we are entering into autumn. We just celebrated the autumnal equinox and the autumn goddess festival, Sarada Navaratri it's called, the Sharat Chandra, the autumn festival of the goddess. So now here we are in a new period. That's important to acknowledge also, the passing of time. Not just the impermanence, which we said on Monday can lead one to dismiss the world as unreal. It's not that. It's rather the dynamism that's inherent. Feeling like I'm not the person I was yesterday. I certainly wasn't the person I was 9 days ago, 10 days ago. But now certainly I'm not the person I was yesterday. Even I'm not beholden to the person I was in the previous breath. Yesterday at the Mahanavami Homa, late at night, early in the morning, I'm eating the spiciest pickles I've ever had in my life because Ran Malyaka was feeding me the most delicious fish curry and pickles. It's like that Mia song, the MIA song, Matangi, she sings, I like fish and mango pickles. That's just what South Indians love. So it's the spiciest pickle in the world. I'm like sweating. And they were talking about how pitta I am and how fiery I like my food. And she's like, do you even take a breath when you give lectures? And I'm like, oh yeah. Maybe I don't. So this totally dismisses my point about being renewed with every breath. If you don't take any breaths, maybe you don't get renewed. So this might not be true in my case. I might be stunted. But we're not the same person from breath to breath, from day to day, from season to season, and from Navaratri to Navaratri. So today on Vijaya Daśamī, I pray that we are all forever transformed and that this day is the first day of the rest of our life. I pray that the goddess is pleased with our worship. And most of all, I pray that we're inspired to actually take up that worship and continue that worship based on what we learned over the course of these 9 nights. So as Satji is saying, sometimes it feels kind of sad. Actually at the end of Navaratri, there's it's a lot of people become really depressed. Like it's very sad because you have to immerse the Divine Mother. And so people cry and they resist the moment when Mother is being put in the river. They're bringing the gata and the clay image of Mother to the river in this big procession today. And as they get to the river, people wail and cry because they don't want to see the Divine Mother immersed for 9 days. They've been worshipping this image, and every day maybe they've been falling, prostrating before this image, crying before this image, offering their car keys, their house keys so that their houses and cars will be blessed, offering their babies so their babies will be blessed, revealing their most intimate, innermost secrets to this image in which they feel the living presence of the goddess. And before anybody denounces idol worship, they should try worshipping idols. Before you knock it, you should try it. And then you'll realize, like, there's something to it. That's probably the reason why almost all cultures since the dawn of human civilization have done it. I'm very suspicious of fads. And in my opinion, so much of Abrahamic religion is a fad. It just emerged. Like, it's the new kid on the block, We have a lot to learn as a human civilization. And when we look at the whole trajectory of what it was to be human, we realize that at the heart of it was idol worship, so much so that we need the Christ. You just cannot move forward in the Abrahamic world without having something to meditate on. And so the Christ is an important image. He is the idol, I would argue, upon which you can focus your love and your joy and your devotion in the context of the Abrahamic world. Now, of course, in the context of the Dharmic world, you take your pick. It could be the Christ. It could be anyone. Any representation of God is good. And a physical representation of God, which matches your internal psychical model of God, is better, I would argue. Because we are physical beings, temporal beings. We're symbolic beings. We exist in a realm of materiality. So we feel. And therefore, we should work accordingly. We should flow along with the natural predispositions of the mind, with the natural proclivities of the intellect. And like I was saying 2 or 3 years ago about Navarātri, with our aesthetic proclivities. We're a culture, a civilization, a human race, whatever you want to call us. We're an organism that loves beauty. And that's what Navarātri ultimately is about. If any of you have seen any of the pictures I've been sending, you'll see that they're maximally beautiful. Flowers galore, infinite flowers. Like, oh my God, like all sorts of colors of flowers. Piles of flowers, heaps of flowers, flower petals, and not just flowers. If flowers were beautiful, what to say of flowers smeared with sandalwood paste? The most fragrant of all pastes. I mean, like, oh my God, the fragrance of the flower augmented with the sandalwood paste and all other kinds of waters, rose water, orange blossom water, etc., etc. And this water is being poured from one vessel to another, and those vessels are so beautiful. Oh my God, I was going to go grab something, but it's okay. I'm staying in the flow of things. But the koshakushi, the way it's shaped like a yoni or like a fish, like the goddess's eyes are like lotus flowers or like a fish, Meenakshi, as you can see. Lotus eyes, how beautiful. And then there's bells, all different kinds of bells and drums, the sounds, the smells, the textures of the flower petals, the cloth of various saris being offered to the goddess, flower garlands touched with sandalwood paste. And then what to say of the goddess? Who can describe that beauty? It's unbelievable. It's otherworldly. You could say formally, structurally, it's a remarkable image of a goddess with many arms. Not that she has many arms. You could argue she has 2 arms, but the many arms depict her dynamism. Some people say, haha, you worship aliens. Look, that goddess has so many arms. How silly. We don't have many arms. Yeah, well, because we're humans and this is the goddess. She can have many arms if she wants. She can have infinite arms. But haven't you considered that maybe the symbol is not as obvious as ye of limited intellect want it to be? Haven't you considered that ancient cultures have a deeply refined and sophisticated way of looking at the world and of representing it? I'm sorry that you are stunted in your artistic expression and your ability to aesthetically render what high intellectual ideas you have. But most cultures in the world are not so inhibited. They're able to say in art, in form, in figure, what the highest philosophers can only hint at in concept. And so the goddess has 18 arms, 10 arms, and all of that just depicts her dynamism. Sometimes 16 arms, depicting the days of the moon, the waxing and waning moon. Sometimes 10 arms, like Kali, signifying the 10 directions. This is very important to note that her arms symbolically convey not only her dynamism, but her all-pervasive presence in time and her all-pervasive power in every action that we do. So we look at her arms, and then more importantly, we see her weapons. That's really dramatic. What it does to the mind to prostrate before an image of a many-armed, tall goddess holding swords and shields and bows and arrows and nooses and God knows what else, conch, discus, mace. I mean, it does something that the intellect knows nothing of. So then there's the arms, there are the weapons, there's the clothing, there's the ornaments, and then there's her face. And what can you say about that face? And after 9 days of looking at that face, worshipping that image, she comes to life. She really does. And until a person tries this for themselves, they don't know what we're talking about. How can a piece of clay come to life? It's not clay. It's an image of spirit. But it takes a bit of refinement to be able to see it. And so all throughout the festival, people come in droves, like swarms of bees around a blooming flower. They come in droves and they pour their devotion into one image. Just think about what that would do after the course of 9 nights. It really charges the image. Everyone's gaze empowers the image, because their gaze, like in the Chandi, you saw the goddesses, the goddess emerges from the gaze of the gods. The gods emerge from the goddess, and then the gods look outward and form the goddess. Look how creation is the creator, is the creation. And so we are created in God's image. So do you know what we do? We create God in our image. I have no idea why the statement, you made God in man's image, I don't know why that contradicts the statement, God made man in her image. Like, why are those contradictory? Only one with limited intellect who cannot deal with paradoxes and sophisticated lines of reasoning, they would think, oh yeah, if man created God, therefore God can't create man. What? You think the arrow can't go in 2 directions? Haven't you studied chemistry? Like, or quantum mechanics? You know, like, things can move in 2 directions. That being said, the goddess created us, and you know what we do? As an image, as a living representation of the goddess in this world, we sculpt out of clay that very same goddess which sculpted this body out of clay. And then with the same power through which we emerge, we then project that power into the image, and she emerges. And by God does she come. As a result of Navarātri, by God does she make her presence known. There in the midst of human assembly, she comes and dances and plays and speaks to people. And so imagine what it's like at the end of 9 nights to then have to immerse that image in which you saw the living goddess. It would be equivalent to killing your deity, drowning your deity, because that is in fact what happens. You take her to the water and you immerse her, and you never see her again until next year, until we do this all over again. So it's really depressing. A lot of people cry and weep. They grab the feet of the deity before she's immersed, and when she gets immersed, some of them follow her into the water, and it's like people have to be held back, and it's of course a festival of great merriment. There are people dancing, especially in Bengal. They hold these 2 censers of incense, and they like whirl about and dance, and it's very ecstatic. And the Romani people do the same thing. This is one of the most remarkable things. The Romani people in Europe, when they moved into Europe from various places, mainly northwestern India, when they got there, of course, they immediately assimilated into Catholicism because of the worship of the Divine Mother. They were Śāktas, most of them, and so they worship the Divine Mother. We're Hindus, you know, we don't care what you call mother. For us, mother is mother. You call her Durga, you call her Kali, you call her Mary, it's no big deal. We just worship her. So what they do, interestingly, in some communities among the Romani people, is they do a festival for Mother Durga. Same thing, Mother Mary, and often it's a black Madonna, so you can see the link here. But anyway, they take that black Madonna, and in a procession, they walk her to the ocean and immerse her. Do you know this about the Romani people? They practice an immersion ceremony of Madonna, of Mother Mary, just like we do. And so you could say, oh, well, this is obviously cultural transmission, like you'll see in that wonderful French movie, L'Autodrome, which I super suggest, by the way, which it follows the movement of the Romani people out of India and into Europe. But as you'll see, like in that movie, or as you do any studies on them, you'll see like, oh, okay, this is a clear case of cultural transmission, that people in India migrated into Europe, and so they brought with them their Durga Puja, or to use the Bengali way of saying it, Durga Pujo. But you can even be a Campbellian about this. You could say, well, maybe it's not a matter of cultural transmission. It could be that, but it could also be a universal recognition of form dissolving into formlessness. And so I'll tell you a beautiful story. Nobody likes to immerse the mother. Very few people like to immerse the mother, having worshipped her for a while. So Kali Puja is the same thing. We make an image of Ma Kali, and then after we worship Ma Kali, the first Saturday after Kali Puja, she's immersed in the ocean. Now, Uma Ma told me this. No, not Uma. I think Geeta Prana Mataji told me the story. this was way back when, and they were all feeling sad about having to immerse Kali. And then Gita Prana said, when they put the image in the water, it looked like she just went in really quickly. Just like sunk super quickly. And Gita Prana had this realization. She was like, oh, the form, the goddess longs for the formless. She is so ecstatic and so excited to plunge into the water that, like, while we might be crying, the goddess can't wait actually to jump back into the loving embrace with her Mahakala Bhairava. Because for her, it's like sexual union. Like, she's in bliss, she's in rapture when she jumps. Yeah, she blooped back and she's like, gone. And then when Gita Prana said this, my Guru Deva was there, Gita Prana was there, and I was sitting on the floor, and immediately what came to mind was Kalakashtakam, Sri Shankaracharya's Kalakashtakam. And there he says, Mahakala Kula Kama Kalike, Mahakala Kama Kula Kalikeyam. And I just like spontaneously, I felt like saying that, I said it, and Guru Deva looked at me with a very serious thing, and he said, huh. And there was a moment of such seriousness. So Mahakala Kama Kula Kalikeya means, so the verse goes, Gala Drakta Munda Vali Kantamala. I praise that goddess who is covered in blood. And then he goes on to describe the goddess, Gala Drakta Munda Vali Kantamala, Mahaghora Rava Sudamshtra Karala. She roars terrifyingly, she has two fangs. Sudamshtra Karala, she dwells in the smashana, her hair is wild and free. And most importantly, Mahakala Kama Kula Kalikam. She's ever desirous of sexual union with her Lord Mahakala Bhairava. And that's where Gita Prana was saying, like, look how eager she is to go back into the formless. So Mahakala is the formless. She is that power of the formless to become the form. And we acknowledge this. And the Buddhists, the Zen Buddhists, they say if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. And everyone's like, oh my God, that's so edgy. Hare, we've been doing it a long time, okay? Like, we know this. This is a deep embedded idea in our tradition that, like, the form becomes the formless becomes the form. We ritually act it out. Everyone says this, oh, if you see the Buddha on the road, kill him. Yeah, but are they? Do they meet the Buddha on the road? Do they kill the Buddha on the road? Hare, it's all just concept. It's all just intellectual machinations. Until you work on things symbolically, very rarely will you see any transformation. However many concepts, however many books you have, it won't be transformation. It's something, it's not nothing, but it's only on the level of the intellect. How superficial. When you do Durga Puja, you realize what children we are as intellects, as thinking things. There's a much deeper realm, which you can only access arguably through symbol, through art, through music, through dance, through beauty. And so I would argue this is one of the most beautiful days of the ceremony, because today you meet the Buddha on the road, having met the goddess in the hall, in the worship hall, and you drown her. Importantly, like some traditions, you don't drown the goddess, you drown an image of the goddess. You take a mirror and the goddess is reflected in the mirror, and then you drown the mirror. Which is interesting because you're immersing your own representation, your own mental concept of the goddess, as opposed to the goddess, because you can never immerse the goddess. So it's like you're not killing the Buddha on the road, you're killing your concepts of the Buddha, so you realize you're the Buddha. Similarly, you're killing the idea that she is the object and you are the subject, so you realize that the object and subject are one. So this moment in Vijaya, it's arguably this is your chance for non-dual realization as you immerse Ma. Okay, so having said all of that, happy Vijaya. I hope we are all immersed in the bliss and joy of the festival, and that we are all immersing our concepts in the ocean of Mahakala, who is non-different from Shakti, who have been worshipping with fervor. Naturally, you might ask now, what are some next steps? Having worshipped Ma with fervor for 9 days, now what? And that's why I think sometimes people feel sad. It's not just that the goddess is being immersed. I mean, it's mainly that, but it's also like, now what? So much of my life for these 9 days have been intense contemplation, worship, and now it's like we feel a bit listless. It's like, what are we gonna do? Oh yeah, Adelina, welcome. Ma is impeccable. It's good to have you, Ma. Welcome. Meet everyone. There's Kuleshwari. Kuleshwari teaches Hatha Yoga, among various other things, and she's got so many classes throughout the week, so you're welcome to any and all. And here's Sai, who I'm going to see soon in Ashland, Oregon. And this is Nitya Leela, but you can't see her right now, but I'll just put her here so you can see her. She's in the UK. Oh wait, actually I can't. I can only. And this is Chris G. There he is. Jaima, Chris G. There's so many people you should meet. I'm so happy that you're here. Okay, good. Yes. Ma is the darkness. Good. Jaima, welcome. So, sometimes people feel listless. It's not just that the goddess has been immersed. I mean, sometimes the home feels so empty. I can imagine this is what parents feel when their kids move to college. like kind of empty nester feeling. It's like there was an image here and we were partying for so many days and now the image is not here anymore. She's been immersed in the river and like the home might feel empty. So there's that, but your schedule might also feel kind of empty. It's not just like the space is empty, the space in time. Oh, Anahata Devi in Russia. It's so nice to see you all. But like the feeling of now what will I do with my time? That can come up. So some Navaratri next steps. The thing about Hinduism, that's kind of a cute opening to a book or something. Think about Hinduism. Oh, Jai Ma, Heli Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma. Good. No, don't worry, no pressure. I just wanted to say hello. But Jai Ma, Jagan Mata, mother of the whole world. She holds all of this on her back. Jagadatri, she carries the world. Jagadatri. But yeah, okay, so having now, oh, Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai, oh, Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma. Yeah, if nothing else, we immerse the image so we can recognize it in this. In the true representation of Ma is every mother, is every person. So when we drown the image, we go from God the particular to God the universal, or God the specific to God the general. We see the one in all and the all in one. Which is what the goddess says. Ekaivaham, I am only one. There is no second here. Look how I retrieve all my powers. Look how I withdraw them all back into their source. As we see in verse 5 of chapter 10 in the Chandi. Okay, so having said all of that, some of you were introduced to the Chandi as a result of the past 9 or 10 days. So maybe before Navaratri, you didn't know about the Chandi, but because Navaratri is so oriented around this text called the Chandi or the Devī Māhātmyam or the Saptashati, these are all different words for the same thing. But although you might not have known about this text, as a result of the festival, it was introduced probably. And so many people have reached out to me saying how now they're obsessed with the text. Like having read it in English even, or having interacted with the Sanskrit mantras, 700 verses. They're so overwhelmed with how beautiful it is, how poetic, how profound, how transformative, that they want to keep doing the sadhana. And yes, as Śāktas, you can orient your whole life around this narrative called the Saptashati, as you should, because it's the central text, as I've been saying, of the Śākta tradition. So keep doing that. Keep chanting Argala Stotram, Kilaka Stotram, Kavacha. You can chant those every single day. You can chant the hymns from the Chandi, like in chapter 1, Brahma Dikrita Devi Stutihi. I chant that quite often actually. Then there's the second hymn, Indra Dikrita Devi Stutihi. There's Aparajita Stutihi. And of course, Narayani Suktam, the last hymn. You can chant all 4 of those. All 4 or some of them, or just like have them around you and invoke them when you need. So there are these hymns, and of course there's the text itself, which you can continue to read. There are auxiliary texts like the Devī Bhāgavatam that you could also read to supplement your study of the Chandi. So Jai Ma, Virupakshi, Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma. Good to see you, Shubho Navarātri, Jai Ma. So this is what I would suggest. Let's do some further study things. Like, what would you read now? Keep reading the Chandi, of course. You can go over it again and again and again. The Chandi, the narrative of the Chandi is not something that happened. It's really something that's happening. The whole narrative is told in eternal time, in mythological time. So you can read it again and again and again, and it will always be fresh. I mean, come on. The text is at least from 1000 BC, 600 BC. It's from the Puranic age, right? It's like conservatively dating it to like 600 BCE, etc. It really hasn't gotten old in all this time. So I don't think it will anytime soon. It's eternally fresh, and you can read it again and again and again. So keep reading the Chandi, keep chanting the Chandi. Of course, interact with it in the Sanskrit. We can improve our pronunciation through practice and constant repetition. Keep reading it in English and contemplating the scenes. But also, you might be interested to read some of the supplementary material like Mahakala Samhita. I would start with the Devī Bhāgavatam. So I'll put it in the chat, and I'll also put it in the description probably of this video. But the Devī Bhāgavatam is a text telling the story of the goddess Bhuvaneshwari, and of course it fleshes out many of the narratives that you find in the Chandi. And the Chandi has many different versions, but the narrative of the Chandi is something that is explored throughout the literature, throughout the Śākta world. And so you get different ways of looking at the same story. So Devī Bhāgavatam is a good resource. There's a translation by Swami Vijnanananda. Now it's interesting, nobody really understands this because Swami Vijnanananda is nowhere to be found in the text. There's no commentary. He doesn't really even do a lengthy introduction. He just translates the Sanskrit of the Devī Bhāgavatam into straight English. And when you purchase this text, you'll see it doesn't even have the Sanskrit in it. There's no verses or anything. It's just the pure English translation of the Devī Bhāgavatam. So that's why people don't really know this, because there's no mention of Ramakrishna or Sarada, but this is indeed the Swami Vijnanananda, who was a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. So this is an important text in our lineage, actually. It's part of our lineage, but few people know that it is, because Swami Vivekananda doesn't come out and say, I am a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, and here is my translation of the Devī Bhāgavatam, and here is my commentary along the lines of what I learned from my master and from my Guru Bhai, Swami Vivekananda. Nothing like that. He just does his job and translates the text and presents a beautiful, I would say, I think, as far as I know, English translation of the Devī Bhāgavatam. The Sanskrit is gorgeous, glorious. There's nothing like it. This very high, poetic, beautiful Sanskrit. But here, the English is so readable, so digestible. So I would just like suggest this book. You can have it by your bedside. And it's stories within stories within stories. And if you read it every night before you go to bed, I mean, oh my God. That was my practice for so many years. I would just read the Devī Bhāgavatam every night before bed. And the kind of dreams that you would have, the insights that it could help you, especially when you're in that liminal space between waking and dreaming. It's a poetic story. It's a symbolic way of interacting with these ideas. Okay, so there's the Devī Bhāgavatam. Another thing that you might like, and I've suggested this book before, but this is somebody who used to live here, actually. He was just down the road. He was in San Diego, a beloved member of our community. He stayed at the Hollywood Vedanta Center. I think maybe Tribuco, if not Hollywood. But he was in the monastic community for a little while. His name is Devadatta Kali, and Devadatta ji recently kicked the mortal coil, so he's no longer with us in physical form, but he is a very beloved member of our community, and he has contributed something really wonderful. It's a great academic translation, poetic translation, and readable English translation by a Western author immersed, steeped in Indic tradition. So he's a scholar, Indic scholar, Sanskritist, I believe. And my Gurudeva, actually, I'm very proud of this, helped a lot in the production of this book, like in advising it, etc. Because a lot of this was done here in this part of the world, in Southern California. So for those who are in America or in the Western world, they might find this to be a very readable translation. I often suggest Swami Jagadishwarananda ji, right? So like usually when I'm suggesting a chandi for people to purchase, this is the one that I typically invite them to get. The Devī Māhātmyam by Swami Jagadishwarananda ji. So this is of course a Swami in the Ramakrishna Mission. This book is published by Ramakrishna Mutt and Mission, making it incredibly affordable. But I like it because it's small. I mean, it's like a very friendly, pocket-friendly kind of book which you can carry around with you everywhere. And because it's the chandi, arguably you will carry it around with you everywhere. You know, here's my copy, and you can see it's like really like, it's like battered, there's like stains all over it. Unfortunately, this is after all the goddess, but she gets a little messy sometimes in war, you know. Anyway, so she's come around with me everywhere, all over the world. And that's what I like about this book. It travels very well. Yeah, I know. It is unfortunately, as you might say, a very well-loved book. There's like all the, oh my God, look at that. It's like, yeah, it is a very well-loved book. It's all coming apart, my chandi. Oh ma, this is, yeah, let me put it in the chat for you. See, mine is, I can even like take mine apart and bring sections with me if I want. Whoops. Anyway, let me put this back in the book. Ah! Yeah, there we go. Okay, so this is the Devī Māhātmyam that I like to carry. So this is the Devanagari version, but there's also a transliterated version. So this will be translated in Roman alphabets, right? So this would be helpful for someone who doesn't read the Devanagari. So these are easy to carry around. That's why I typically recommend them. I often recommend that you keep your chandi in some kind of red cloth or something just to like honor it and revere it, because it's not a book, it's a collection of mantras. It's a living sonic form of the Divine Mother. So this is usually what I tend to recommend. And there is a translation by Swami Jagadishwarananda ji in the footnotes, as you can see. And I love it. I love the translation. I like it because it's very like technically precise. It leaves some of the technical terms like sandhya, etc. untranslated, which I like. But this, I think, is a bit more readable for a Western audience. That translation is written by an Indian, and it has that Indian kind of sense of translating English. Whereas this is a more modern translation, and I think many in this day and age will find this more readable, especially if your first language is English and if you grew up in the West. This is a nice introduction. And what's great about it is the introduction. So if you'd like to interact with the chandi more, read the introduction of Devadatta Kali's In Praise of the Goddess. So the book is called In Praise of the Goddess, the Devī Māhātmyam and its meaning. So having studied the chandi, having chanted the chandi for 9 or 10 days throughout Navarātri, it's time to deepen your relationship to the chandi by maybe reading academic scholarly works on the chandi to understand it better. So this would be a good text, I think. The introduction to Devī Māhātmyam and its meaning, In Praise of the Goddess by Devadatta Kali. And not only that, after the introduction, which has like a brief history, Devī Māhātmyam's origin, structures, and context, there is the Devī Māhātmyam. And the whole thing is translated. So I like to read different translations because that way you can interact with the text anew, afresh, So read this translation. It's really poetic and beautiful. But I want to point you to something else. At the end of the text, after you finish the Chandi, the Chandi section, there are these supplementary hymns. It's called Anga, like the Angas, right? So there are 6 of them. The first one is the Kavacham. And then he gives a translation of the Kavacham. And then there's the Argala Stotram, and he gives his own translation of the Argala Stotram. There's the Kilaka Stotram. There's the Ratri Sukta and the Devī Sukta. So these 2 are from the Vedas. So the Ratri Sukta is from the Rig Veda, and the Devī Sukta is also from the Rig Veda. So these are very old. So incredibly ancient texts, and to hear them chanted is a revelation. I really recommend going on YouTube and typing in Devī Sukta and hearing a rendition or recitation of this hymn. It's perhaps the first time a non-dual claim was made in human history, in recorded human history. And you'll be very delighted to know that it was a daughter of a sage, who discovered her identity with the goddess and spoke in first person as the goddess. The first declaration of Advaita, I would argue, in written history. That's a remarkable point. Ashokanandaji, Swami Ashokananda was giving a lecture in San Francisco, and he was talking about the rishis, and he said, I'm very proud to say that many of our rishis were actually rishikas. They were young women. And that's remarkable. Not like, it's not a small fact, not a small thing, because in religion you very rarely find the female voice. You very rarely find female authors, or female prophets, or female sages. And when they emerge, they're almost always killed. Like Margareta Poretta or something like that, or Cassandra. I would even argue like Cassandra of Troy. Like she was a prophetess, but nobody could understand her prophecies. Even her father, King Priam, detested her because of her wild ways and her mysticism. So women and spirituality have often been a difficult thing for society to handle, because society often doesn't like when women are empowered, and nothing is more empowered than spirituality. But in India, we find prior to the Mughal invasion, prior to the colonial project, like there was a lot of empowerment, and you can see that in the fact that the literature preserves the feminine voice, preserves the female prophetess in its history. So here we have the Devī Sukta, which is one of my favorites for that reason, and perhaps one of the most ancient and most important, I would argue, works on the goddess. It's remarkable literature. So in this text, in Praise of the Goddess by Devadatta Kali, you'll find in my version in page 213, you'll find the Devī Sukta in the Devanagari and in translation. So I'm just going to do that for you now. I'm going to read you the translation from Devadatta Kali. And then I'm going to invite you to take up a practice of reciting the Devī Sukta. It's a Vedic hymn, so you'll have to practice a little bit with the swaras. It's nice to listen to it on YouTube and whatnot, or wherever else you stream your Devī Sukta. But chant that. That's typically what we do after we chant the Chandi. We chant Argala, we chant Kilaka, we chant Kavacham. There's so many, Siddha Kunjika Stotram, there's so many auxiliary stotrams. But the Devī Sukta, or even I would argue the Ratri Sukta, these are some of the best. So where do you go now? Having studied the Chandi, having immersed yourself in it for 9 days, take up a practice of chanting daily, or on Tuesdays, or on Saturdays, or on the new moon or full moon, or on the 8th day of the waxing moon, whenever. Just like take up a practice, as often as you like, of interacting with the Devī Sukta, beginning with its translation first, so you can understand its meaning, so you can fall in love with this piece of literature, and that will inspire you to learn how to chant it. And that's going to be very rewarding. So okay, we have the Chandi, we have the Devī Bhagavatam by Swami Vijnanananda, that translation I recommend. We have the Devī Sukta. I think that's good for now. That would be a good way to move forward. So let me just read to you now the translation of the Devī Sukta. This is the translation from Devadatta Kali ji. Rest in peace, ji. Or rather we should say rest in Shakti, rest in power. So here it is. Now remember, this is a young woman at the dawn of human civilization who is saying these words as they've been translated now. Om Hrim. The first word of the Devī Suktam is Aham. I am. The Maha Mantra of the Shaiva Śākta world. Ah, ha, ah, ah, I, u, ra, la, e, I, o, au, ang, aha. Gang, hang, chang, jang, nyang. Dang, dang, nang, dang, dang, nang. Bang, bang, mang, yang, lang, bang, shang, sang, hang, sa. This whole thing, through to ksha, it's contained in aham. So Aham, the goddess as Vach, as speech, speaks the following words. I move through the gods of storm and light, through the gods of the heavens, through all the gods. I uphold the lords of the day and of the night, the sovereign of the atmosphere, the god of fire, and the benevolent celestial guardians. I bear the nectar of immortality. I support the creator of living beings, the protector of the universe, and the gracious Lord of prosperity. I bestow wealth on those who prepare the sacrifices and offer the oblations with an attentive mind. I am the sovereign, in whom all the auspicious gods are united. Shining with consciousness, I am foremost among those worthy of worship. The gods diffuse me in every direction, my presence abiding in many places and revealed in manifold ways. Through me alone all mortals live who see and breathe and hear what is said, not knowing that they abide in me. Hear me as I speak the truth to you. I myself proclaim this, which is pleasing to gods and men alike. I make mighty whomsoever I wish. I make him devout and open his eyes to right understanding. For the God who puts evil to flight, I draw the bow, that his arrow may strike down the hater of devotion. Such is the fervor I stir within that man. Through heaven and earth I extend. At the summit of creation, I bring forth the heavens. My creative power flows from amid the waters of the infinite ocean. Thence I spread through all the worlds and touch yonder heaven with my vastness. I breathe forth like the wind, setting all the worlds in motion. So great have I become in my splendor, shining far beyond heaven and earth. So I'll just read a little passage here from Devadatta Kali, his commentary. The hymnist of the Devī Śākta, which is Rig Veda 10:125, is Ambrini, the daughter of a Vedic sage. Inspired with the knowledge of the self, she becomes a seer, through whom the goddess Vak proclaims her own glory. To appreciate the full import of this remarkable hymn, we must keep in mind that Vak, Saraswati, and Aditi are one and the same goddess, the source of all powers of heaven and of earth. The Brihad Devata, a large work that explains the deities of the Rig Vedic hymns, further identifies this supreme goddess with Durga, and the reference for this is Brihad Devata 279. Reinforcing that identity, the text of the Devī Māhātmyam itself specifies that when Surata and Samadhi worshipped on the riverbank, they chanted the Devī Śākta. This is in chapter 13, verse 9. The Devi, whom the king and merchant addressed, is none other than the primeval great goddess who spoke through Ambrini, the Rig Veda's female seer. The Devī Śākta belongs to the most highly developed phase of early Vedic philosophical thought, which leans increasingly towards metaphysical inquiry. Its archaic language presents a number of difficulties, not the least of them a pervasive use of ordinary words in a metaphorical sense. Because the associations for many words employed as symbols of other things are lost on us today, literal translations tend to obscure the meaning that would have been obvious to the original hearers. The foregoing translation interprets the meaning behind the metaphors. A more literal version follows below, along with explanatory comments. So I like this commentary because he presents the verses and he gives a literal transformation. So I'm going to translation. So I'll do that for you now. Verse 1. I go about with the Rudras, the Vasus, I with the Adityas, and also with the all gods. I uphold both Mitra and Varuna. I uphold both Indra and Agni. I the Ashvins. And then he gives a commentary on that. So you can see a lot of this is Vedic coded. I uphold the Soma to be pressed, and I uphold Tvashtar, Pushan, and Bhaga. I grant wealth to the attentive sacrificer who offers oblations, who presses the Soma. I am the queen who gathers treasures together, the conscious or knowing one, first amongst those of worthy of worship. The gods have diffused me in many directions, being in many places and being known in many ways. Through me he eats food, who sees, who breathes, who hears what is spoken. Knowing it not, they dwell beside me. Hear me tell you that which is worthy of faith. I myself proclaim this, which is esteemed by gods and men. Whomever I wish or love, him I make mighty, him I make a Brahmana, a seer, a man of good understanding. I draw the bow for Rudra, that his arrow may strike down the hater of devotion. I rouse the wise man to the fervor of battle. I penetrate heaven and earth. See, the wise man here is identified with the warrior. So it's a warrior text, as you can see. At the summit of this world, I give birth to the Father. My womb is in the midst of the waters, in the ocean. I give birth to the Father. Isn't that interesting? And her womb is in the middle of the ocean. Thence I extend through all the worlds and reach up to yonder sky with my greatness. I blow forth like the wind, resolutely commencing all worlds, beyond heaven, beyond this earth. To such an extent have I become in my glory. And of course you have to understand wind here to mean prana. Prana as in Shakti. So she is the Shakti that blows throughout the oceans of this world, causing the waves of form, name and function to rise. So may this be an offering to Vak Devi, to Ambrini, the young woman who in the 4000 BCE period recognized her oneness with that Devi. May this be an offering to all of you, who are each and every one of you the goddess incarnate. Shubha Vijaya. Om Shri Mahishasura Mardini Devi Ki Jai. Om Dakshayagya Vinashinya Mahagoraye Yogini Koti Parivrittaye Bhadrakalikaye Hrim Om Durgaye Swaha. Shri Saradarpanamastu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.